You guys are complaining about that Sydney Sweeney jeans ad, so I went and saw it.
That's Nazi propaganda. Wow.
Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ads are weird. Like fascist weird. Like Nazi propaganda weird.
The only reason Sydney Sweeney would denounce hate and divisiveness in December following backlash from July is because she's losing money. I honestly think she had a conversation with Scooter Braun where he said, listen, if you can rebrand yourself to pretending like you give a shit. Sydney said the words, when I care about an issue, you'll hear from me, and we did not hear from her for months.
Is it bad enough that I already can imagine what the comments are gonna be like? Okay, so I was thinking about whether to do this video or not. Now I decided to finally do it because I have my own thoughts about Sydney Sweeney, and the amount of discourse I've seen surrounding her is just, you know, insane, and I thought, why not talk about her, provide my own opinions, because I mean, this girl just can't seem to stay out of, like, controversies no matter how hard she tries. Like, any fucking time that Sydney Sweeney appears in, like, in headlines or whatever, people always have, like, thoughts about her, and so do I, because, you know, I wouldn't say I'm, like, the biggest fan of Sydney Sweeney. Like, when I first saw her in Euphoria, I didn't exactly think she was a bad actress. I do think that she has a potential to be a good actress, and some of her other performances were pretty good. So yeah, I don't think she's a horrible actress. I definitely don't think she's like Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, Anya Taylor-Joy level good, but you know, I can definitely see that she is, you know, trying to be taken seriously. However, with the recent, I guess you could say, like, controversy surrounding her, she just really can't seem to, I guess, I don't know, like, to me personally, Sydney Sweeney has kind of been confusing. Like, you know, on one hand, she wants to be taken seriously as an actress, but on the other, she's just making questionable choices in her career that really make people question whether or not she genuinely wants to be taken seriously or not. Again, this is just gonna be my opinions, my thoughts about Sydney Sweeney. I'm not gonna be taking anybody's side in this because while I don't exactly like some of the choices she's making in her career, I'm not gonna entirely just, you know, hate her or just assume that she's just a horrible person like some people have done when it came to a recent controversy that we're going to discuss. I don't think that Sydney Sweeney is a horrible person, and some of the backlash towards her was just blown way out of proportion, so disclaimer to anyone, because I don't know, like, I'm not relevant enough for people to care about, but I made like a short little video on my Insta and then I posted on my YouTube shorts about, you know, this whole Sydney Sweeney thing, and I did get some people kind of mad at my comments, so again, this is just going to be my opinion. I'm not taking anybody's side. Again, you guys can have your opinions. I know that people will obviously have completely different opinions from mine, and that is completely okay. As long as you're not like bullying or harassing those who have different opinions, that's absolutely fine. While I wasn't like a huge fan of Sydney Sweeney, I will say I did technically, I guess you could say, like her from like 2019 to 2020 when she wasn't as well known, because, you know, she first gained notoriety from playing Cassie on Euphoria, and in 2019 to 2020 she wasn't that big, but people did like her back then, and I guess I could say I did too. And I remember actually at one point I was like, I really want this girl to be well known. I want this girl to have more opportunities because, you know, she's a pretty talented girl. She's also pretty. Like, yes, Sydney Sweeney is pretty. I don't think it's problematic to admit that, by the way. And then when season 2 of Euphoria came out, I really would say that that's when she really blew up, because I think that's when people started to really notice her acting abilities when season 2 came out. And also, I guess, because Cassie in season 2 was a mess, I won't lie, but Sydney Sweeney managed to play that role perfectly and people just fell in love with her at that point. However, I would definitely say that I think the first ever controversy, I'm saying controversy in quotation marks, so I don't really think that this is Sydney Sweeney's fault, but some people blamed it on her. The first ever controversy that Sydney Sweeney landed herself into was when she was celebrating her mom's birthday party. I think it was her birthday party, and it was cowboy themed, which nothing wrong with cowboy themes, of course. However, some people noticed that in the photos, you can see her mom and dad wearing MAGA hats. And some people thought that Sydney Sweeney was MAGA because her parents were wearing these MAGA hats, and, you know, automatically assumed that Sydney Sweeney is suddenly like pro-Trump or whatever. And this is the part where I'm just like, okay, this is ridiculous. Because I remember when this controversy was coming out on Twitter and people were like bashing Sydney Sweeney, and I'm just like, okay, you guys, this is ridiculous. Like, you can't choose your family. And Sydney Sweeney, I don't think Sydney Sweeney is MAGA. I mean, Sydney Sweeney has tweeted before that, you know, she wants to see more representation for minorities in media, and that's not something that a MAGA person would do, mind you. When you live in an environment and your parents, you know, have different views from you, yes, it can pretty much affect a child's environment growing up, but I don't really think that's the case with Sydney Sweeney. I really don't think Sydney Sweeney is really MAGA. I don't think that she's, you know, pro-Trump or whatever. If her parents are, well, that's just her parents' problem, not hers. So yeah, I feel like that whole, you know, discourse was just pretty dumb overall, and Sydney Sweeney did respond to this backlash by saying that she was just celebrating her mom's birthday. And I think she had every right to do this because, you know, like, she was just there for her mom's birthday. And I mean, I totally get it, you know, like, I kind of can relate to Sydney Sweeney in this case because, you know, I do have parents who have completely different views from mine. Like, I don't agree with a lot of things my parents say. Like, I don't think you guys want to know what my parents say, to be honest. If my parents ever had social media, they would be canceled immediately. But I don't entirely agree with everything that my parents say, but I'm not just going to completely disown them or reject them entirely because, you know, it's still my family, and that's the case with Sydney Sweeney. I don't think she should have gotten backlash for something that her parents support. Sydney Sweeney was just there celebrating her mom's birthday, and that's all it should have been. Like, you guys shouldn't have attacked her or accused her of, like, whatever. So I feel like that's the part where I was kind of, you know, I was really much defending Sydney Sweeney here because it's like, you know, you don't choose your family, and if her parents are MAGA, well, that's unfortunate. I don't support MAGA either, by the way. I don't agree with the whole MAGA movement, of course, but I don't think Sydney Sweeney does either. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of point this out because I feel like that's the first controversy, though I really shouldn't call it that. It's not Sydney's fault that her parents are MAGA. So that whole controversy blew over. It didn't really affect her career. Sydney Sweeney was still liked and everybody still liked her. However, the very actual controversy that made people really turn away from Sydney Sweeney, I would say, was that when she partnered up with this company called Dr. Squatch. I don't really know what that company is, by the way. I've never heard of them. The only time I've ever heard about them is with this case. So Sydney Sweeney partnered up with this company, and oh my god, this is the part where actually I did not defend her. This is the part where I actually did agree with the majority. So Sydney Sweeney decided that it would be a great idea to just sell her own bathwater in the form of a soap. When I first heard about this on Twitter, like when I first saw this, I was like, what are we doing? what? Like, this is the part where I really could not just defend Sydney. Like, girl, and this is what I mean when I say that this girl is so confusing, is that Sydney Sweeney has opened up about wanting to be taken seriously as an actress. She has stated multiple times that, you know, she doesn't like the fact that she is seen as only this dumb, blonde bimbo who cries on TV and just, you know, has big boobs. Like, that's really how Sydney Sweeney was really seen. And I feel like Euphoria really just made her be seen like this because, you know, Cassie's character, I mean, as much as I did like Cassie's character in season 1, in season 2, she was really just portrayed as this, like, crazy daddy issues type of character who wants to seek validation from men. Like, that's how her character was, and that's how people perceived Sydney, really, and she really wanted to step away from that. So why the hell are you selling your own fucking bathwater then? Like, I'm sorry, selling your bathwater is something like trolls like Trisha Paytas would do. Now, I don't know if Trisha Paytas ever sold her bathwater. I won't be surprised if she would, because Trisha Paytas' whole career is literally trolling. She does not care what anybody thinks, which is literally what trolls do. However, Sydney, she absolutely does. She absolutely does care how she's taken seriously, but she goes on and does this. Again, like, I was not defending her in that case. I was like, I was very much shocked, but I really wasn't surprised if you know that Sydney Sweeney has pretty much acknowledged the fact that most of her audiences are men. She has a certain demographic that she typically panders to. And this is the problem that I've particularly noticed with Sydney, is that she seems to pander to only one certain demographic, while the other, which is mostly her female audience, because Sydney has female fans, like I'm one of them. There are many women who like Sydney Sweeney primarily because of her acting and her characters that she plays. However, it truly does feel like she's more so just trying to pander to a male audience rather than just broadening her audience in general, and it does feel kind of alienating to her female fans, because me personally, like, I can't really relate to Sydney Sweeney, or I can't really like her if she's selling her fucking bathwater to these gooner men. I mean, one can say that it's a good thing. Maybe if these men can finally take a shower, if they're imagining themselves with Sydney Sweeney, then I guess it's fine. But, you know, still, if I find it kind of weird that you would do something like this, you know? That's kind of like what I wanted to say primarily, is that when you're an actress, and especially if you want to be taken seriously as an actress and wanting to, you know, be out there for everyone, you kind of shouldn't pander to a specific audience or demographic, because it would just feel alienating to the rest of your, you know, audiences. Because when you're an actress, you typically should just include everyone, because that's kind of how you gain a bigger fan base and gain a support base that then will defend you anytime you're in controversy. And the problem here with Sydney Sweeney is that she doesn't really have a certain fan base that really defends her, because, you know, her male audience doesn't particularly care whenever she's in controversy, because they just want to see her be hot and sexy with big boobs, while her female audience is slowly starting to be alienated by her actions. Because again, like when you're an actress or like a singer or like just like literally any influencer, really, you need to, you know, invite everyone.
I would say Taylor Swift would be a good example here, because the reason why she has like such a huge fan base that defends her no matter what she does is because she diversifies her fan base. You know, she doesn't pander to a specific demographic, though mostly women like Taylor Swift, but you know, there are male Swifties as well who don't really also care what she does. They literally defend her. And also because her music is for everyone. She doesn't, you know, center one demographic. She allows everyone to enjoy her music, and that's why she's so successful, and that's why she has like a passionate fan base that defends her literally no matter what.
Pander to any specific audience. I just do whatever on here. And that's kind of how you should really do if you want to, like, you know, especially if you want to be taken seriously. And that's like the main problem with Sydney Sweeney, is that her, you know, her actions, her choices that she makes, they really are, you know, there's really a pattern with the choices and the career choices she makes when it comes to, you know, being in the spotlight. However, nothing can come close to the most recent controversy that Sydney Sweeney has gotten herself into, which was the American Eagle jeans ad. Oh yeah, I have a lot of opinions about this one.
When this ad came out, like I will say, I was slightly weirded out by the tone of it and that weird-ass voice that Sydney Sweeney just started to use anytime like she appears in ads to look seductive, because that's just what she does now. However, this ad really did piss off a large part of the community on Twitter, because there were people who genuinely believed that this ad was promoting eugenics or Aryan supremacy or whatever conspiracy theory, and I'm just like, guys, I don't think this ad is propaganda. Look, the ad clearly was meant to stoke controversy and, you know, outrage from people, and it clearly worked, because this is kind of typically like how rage baiters act. Like, you know how there's like rage baiters on the internet who just say some of the most outrageous things on the internet to get a reaction? I feel like that was the case with this ad, and I think the CEO himself quite literally admitted that the whole point of the ad was just to stoke discourse and arguments around it, and well, they did it, and many of you guys fell for it. And when I saw people like calling this ad propaganda, I truly feel like you guys just don't even know what the word even means. I can't really understand how this ad even is propaganda, but that's just because the people who are using it don't even know what it is. In his book, Propaganda and the Ethics of Persuasion, Professor Randall Marlin provides various different definitions of propaganda, and also I highly recommend reading this book. It's really informative, and it's also personally one of my favorite books that I'm currently reading right now. However, I'm going to be using his own definition of propaganda, the one that he came up with, and it's typically the one that I'm familiar with, and it's also the type that is used to actually study propaganda in any media studies class. So, in his definition, propaganda is the organized attempt through communication to affect belief or action or inculcate attitudes in a large audience in ways that circumvent or suppress an individual's adequately informed, rational, reflective judgment. So, with that definition, I am finding it kind of hard to see how it connects to Sydney Sweeney's ad, because I don't know, I kind of find it really hard to believe that people at American Eagle decided to all organize this attempt in suppressing all of your guys' judgment and, you know, prioritize manipulation and control and imposing this single agenda that this is Nazi propaganda and how Sydney Sweeney is the face of white supremacy and you must all, you know, accept this narrative or perish or something like this. Because I've seen some people also say how Sydney Sweeney is now becoming the face of white supremacy and that it's like a deliberate attempt made by Hollywood or something. Like, dude, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but some of the conspiracy theories people have been making about her is just ridiculous. And this is primarily why I think media literacy is dying, because some people just honestly jump to conclusions, assume the worst of it, and just bash anyone who doesn't agree with them. And this is kind of how we have these whole never-ending culture wars that don't lead us anywhere. Here's the thing. I'm not entirely against analyzing Sydney Sweeney's ad because there are some interesting things and interesting points to be made here about how this ad could possibly connect to the broader discussions of race and beauty and how race and beauty, intersect in terms of ads and how they're presented as such regarding, the demographic that it's trying to appeal to. And when I was doing research for this video, I came across this study that was done back in 2013 by the University of Toronto titled Analyzing How Racial Groups Appear in TV Ads. And I felt like this type of study is kind of relevant to, this ad because this was done back in 2013, but I feel like it's still quite relevant. So when I was researching this, there are some interesting points that I came across in this article. I'm not going to read the whole article here because, this is pretty long. I would recommend to some of you who are actually interested in this topic to go and look up this study. However, I'm just going to say this part here. So this study here tells how white people are more likely to be represented in a more positive light compared to Black or Asian people in Canadian advertisements. And white people are also almost exclusively associated with healthier, whole, unprocessed foods such as eggs, while Black, East, and Southeast Asians, on the other hand, are overrepresented in fast food ads. And I feel like this last part right here does actually align with the messaging of the Sydney Sweeney ad, because Sydney Sweeney here is really presented as the ideal Western beauty standard, which I feel broadly aligns with her current status as a sex symbol in Hollywood, considering just how big she's been. So I feel like the message of the ad that Sydney Sweeney was in was just kind of to promote this type of ideal beauty standards while also kind of going too far by pushing some buttons regarding subtle messaging that aligns with dog whistles. Again, that's just kind of my theory. For any of you who are genuinely curious and actually interested in the topic, again, recommend reading this study. It's quite interesting. It was done back in 2013, but I feel like it is quite relevant to what we're discussing here. So, because that is really the point of media studies, anytime there's a media that tries to present a message, it's always interesting to analyze it, dissect it, and, discuss it, of course, in a mature way. The difference here, of course, is that the people in the TikTok videos that I've shown are not interested in that. They're simply just trying to create discourse surrounding an ad without looking into it as deep as they think it is, because anytime there is outrage primarily from the left, there are left-leaning people that do say, oh, it is that deep, you don't think it's that deep, but it is. But the thing is that it's not that deep because you're not going into deep, you're not analyzing this ad through in a deeper lens. Because the thing is that I actually do agree that there are things that are deeper than they appear to be, but the problem here is that you're still being shallow, you're still just jumping to conclusions and assuming that this ad was all sorts of things. Honestly, like the discourse that I've heard from some people is just insane. All you were doing was just spreading conspiracy theories. But, since I did say before, I'm not exactly going to be taking sides here. And the outrage from the right, or the right-wingers who also were not mad about this ad, but, they were still also joining in on the discourse, were also ridiculous. Like, I've seen people like Megyn Kelly genuinely get mad and assume that blonde, blue-eyed white women can't exist in Hollywood.
I'm not so sure about the boobs situation, but in general, it's fine to be white, blonde-haired, and blue-eyed. I'm sorry, it's okay to say that. And the irony here, of course, is that if you had a Hispanic girl in that ad, if you had a Black girl in that ad, a mixed-race girl in that ad, an Indian girl, an Asian girl, that'd be fine. Fine. You can celebrate their genes, but you cannot say anything about white genes.
Can somebody please remind Megyn Kelly that we have many blonde, blue-eyed actresses who get praised on the daily? Scarlett Johansson is the highest paid actress who has blonde hair and blue eyes. I don't even know what these right-wingers were on, acting as if blonde, blue-eyed white women were not allowed to exist just because there was some criticism towards Sydney Sweeney. Mind you, Sydney Sweeney is not even a real blonde. Her real hair is actually brunette. Anyway, this is probably going to be my closing thoughts because I don't want this video to be too long. So my thoughts here is that both sides were just being very immature. Like, both the right and the left were just fighting over whatever, and that's kind of what the ad wanted. They got what they wanted, they saw the controversy, and they gained notoriety from this. My biggest problem with this ad was that it was just too boring. Like, I'm sorry, but the ad itself was just very boring. And also, maybe it's just me, but I'm just getting sick and tired of seeing Sydney Sweeney everywhere, to be honest. Like, I'm not saying that Sydney Sweeney is a bad actress, since, at the beginning I did say that I wanted her to be in more roles, but seeing her in so many roles now and really getting to know her acting and seeing how she acts, it's kind of mediocre, to be honest, I will say. And also, I guess because the reason why Sydney Sweeney just everywhere is because of just her status as a sex symbol, and Sydney Sweeney's pandering to more of a male gaze is primarily the reason why some of her recent films have been flopping. Is, well, she's alienating her female audience. And like I said at the, you know, at the first half of the video, you can't, you know, you should really diversify your fan base and broadening it instead of just, you know, centering one specific audience. But that's just me. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took me a while to get this out because, you know, I've been busy over the holidays, so I'm getting this video out during the new year. Crazy, I know. So hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'm out.